There are 9 NPCs in Fallout 3 with a very evil karma rating, and I'm going to take a look at each one and see what makes them so bad. The first is Jaime Palabras, a ghoul found deep in the underchambers of the Dunwich Building, a place where he now worships the Dunwich Obelisk, but to really understand why he's labelled as very evil, we first need to understand how he ended up there. Jaime's story begins with his father, a scavenger who one day stumbled upon an ancient tome known as the Krivbeknih. Over time, the book began to twist his father's mind, driving him, in Jaime's own words, a little nuts, which is putting it lightly. Eventually, one night, while staying in an abandoned hospital searching for first aid, his father slipped away, following whatever dark will the book had instilled in him. Left to fend for himself, Jaime set out to find his father. Along the way, he fell in with a group of travellers, who at first seemed like good-hearted people. Sometime later though, Jaime watched in horror as the group murdered an innocent family for nothing more than a sack of rotten vegetables. That was the breaking point for Jaime, and he knew he needed to escape the first chance he got. That chance came when the group attacked a caravan of traders. While his companions were distracted, Jaime turned on them, shooting them dead. Not only did he win his freedom, but he also earned the traders' trust. And as luck would have it, that specific trader knew where Jaime's father had gone, the Dunwich Building. When Jaime finally arrived there, he was greeted with decay, the crumbling ruins of the building itself, and the feral ghouls wandering inside. Deeper within, he discovered his father, or what was left of him. Now a feral ghoul himself, his father was unrecognizable, but there was something that helped Jaime identify him, the Krivbeknih. Jaime made a fatal mistake that day. He took the book, wanting something to remember his father by, but just like before, the Krivbeknih began to corrupt its new owner. It drove Jaime insane. He came to worship the strange obelisk in the basement, and eventually he too succumbed to ghoulification. Through Jaime's journal entries, we get a glimpse of his tragic descent, which I covered in a previous video, but when it comes to his very evil karma, it's hard to see why he's judged so harshly. His actions are tame compared to others on the list, as you'll soon see, but if I had to guess why he's rated the way he is, I'd say we're not seeing Jaime's karma at all, rather the lingering curse of Ugg-Qualtoth, the dark entity tied to the Krivbeknih, a supernatural being that's completely consumed what's left of Jaime's innocence. Next is Alistair Tenpenny, the founder and owner of Tenpenny Tower. It should come as no surprise to learn that Alistair hasn't always called the tower home. He travelled all the way from England to the capital wasteland to make his fortune, probably by yacht or something fitting. La-dee-da. We don't know when he first arrived in the capital wasteland or when he discovered the tower, but upon seeing it, he knew he could turn it into something special. A private residential and commercial building where only the well-to-do or wealthy people can live. We don't really know how Alistair amassed his wealth before crossing the Atlantic Ocean, but there was still enough cash after crossing to renovate the tower, and by 2277, he's even more affluent. And according to the guards, they're always paid on time, a rarity in the wasteland. Tenpenny is an eccentric man, but his accent is fake. He's not really that posh. He rarely leaves his penthouse suite, but on the rare occasion he does, it's to go to Margaret Primrose's cafe, though he mostly has his meals delivered to the penthouse, always ordering the same thing, an iguana bit sandwich with no salt and a peeled pear on the side. Between drinking and eating lunch, he's either playing chess or partaking in what he's called a wasteland safari, which involves standing atop his tower with a sniper rifle, taking pot shots at anything that moves, including ghouls, who are, for all intents and purposes, still human, but that's only a part of what makes him very evil. Alistair doesn't just pay for security, he also hires mercenaries to hunt down rare pre-war relics, and in 2257, one of his teams was sent to Fort Constantine in search of a rare suit of pre-war power armor. The mission failed, and nearly half the team died, or were presumed dead after the fort's automated defences came to life. Tenpenny couldn't care less for the lives lost during that mission, and that's doubly so for the ghoul merc who disappeared. To Tenpenny, ghouls are just shufflers, and humans are tools to be bought and used to further his wants. But with an attitude like that, it should come as no surprise why so many people wish him dead. It turns out Crowley, one of the mercenaries, didn't die. He survived and could be found living in the ghoul city of Underworld. Now he's searching for someone to off a short list of ghoul bigots, and Tenpenny is on that list. Extra caps for a headshot, as Tenpenny believes ghouls are like zombies and can only be killed by destroying the brain, which isn't true. Other ghouls also want Tenpenny dead, and these ghouls are a little closer to home. Roy Phillips is a pre-war ghoul living inside the Warrington Metro tunnels, close to Tenpenny Tower. Due to being human and wanting the finer things in life, they want access to the tower, even offering to pay their way like all the other residents. But because Roy is a ghoul, there's zero chance Alistair will allow him inside.
Why, I do believe you've lost your mind. Ghouls living here? You're serious? I don't suppose I'd mind terribly if ghouls were to live here. And it would be a good bit of sport hunting them down if they misbehaved.
However, if certain residents agree to let them in, then Alistair will allow them entry, provided they pay and follow the rules like everyone else. But all that does is give Roy and his followers the opportunity to enact their revenge for all the times Alistair shot at them, denied them entry, and made them feel less than human. Of course, that might not be the canon outcome. What is canon, though, is the Megaton bomb being disarmed, which brings me to another of Tenpenny's vile deeds. One day, Tenpenny made a complaint about the heap of scrap metal on the horizon spoiling his view. Megaton and his right-hand man offered to take care of it for him. Dozens of lives hang in the balance, and all he can say is he's rather sore about it, but sacrifices need to be made. Besides, he was assured the bomb was quite unstable, and to make himself feel better about the ordeal, he did suggest the residents vacate first, as if that clears his conscience. The fact of the matter is, Tenpenny is willing to displace people to improve his view. It doesn't matter if they die, and if they do, he considers it helping speed along natural selection. He won't lose any sleep over their deaths, and will relish at the grand display of fireworks, wishing there was another nuke he could detonate so he could see it again.
What a grand display of fireworks! I almost wish there was another nuke we could detonate.
There's more to say about Tenpenny, but you should have a pretty good idea as to why he's rated as very evil. But as vile as he is, his actions are often driven by his right-hand man, who Tenpenny describes as a gem of a man. Mr. Burke appeared in Alistair's life shortly after Tenpenny Tower was renovated. This is the earliest point in time where we know anything about this man. Where he came from and who he worked for before Tenpenny is unknown, but what is known is that shortly after working for Alistair, he became so good at catering for Tenpenny's needs that the man in charge hardly had to do anything for himself. And that's the point. With Alistair out of the way, Burke is free to pursue his own evil endeavours. The best example of this is Megaton. Like I said, Alistair complaining about the sight of Megaton ruining his view from the tower was more of a passing comment than a genuine request. It was actually Burke who suggested blowing it up. Of course, vacating the residence first doesn't make the ordeal any better, but Burke goes above and beyond to fulfill his very evil rating. When Burke first arrived at Megaton, he spent some time learning about the bomb and the people living around it, and he determined that no one calling the crater home was worthy of saving, stating their lives are worth 10 times as much in death as they are in life. He also discovered the bomb was still active and only needed a fusion pulse charge to detonate. However, his fascination with the bomb soon caught the attention of Sheriff Lucas Sims, making his job all the more difficult. because if Burke was to go anywhere near the bomb, Lucas wouldn't allow him to leave town without investigating it first. The fusion pulse charge would be discovered, and the chances of Burke escaping Megaton alive would be next to none. And so, he waited. Terminal entries inside Moriarty's saloon reveals Burke appeared without so much as a sound, sat down, and told the owner he's there to wait for some sort of opportunist to come through. Now, if given the chance, he'll hand the pulse charge to someone more willing, slip out of town and wait at Tenpenny Tower. Once confirmation that the bomb is ready to boom, the switch is flicked, and you can see the rest for yourself. However, we know that's not the canon outcome. Thanks to Afterward, the epilogue of Fallout 3, we know Burke wasn't able to detonate the bomb. Burke tried recruiting the Lone Wanderer, but they went straight to the sheriff and told him about Burke's plans to blow up the town. Lucas Sims knew the moment he saw Burke he didn't trust him, and with confirmation from the Lone Wanderer, he was more than happy to confront Burke about the accusation. Burke naturally denied having said such things and tried to leave, but Lucas wasn't satisfied and told Burke that he was under arrest until the situation was resolved, to which Burke said, "Lead the way." And Lucas did. But you should never turn your back on someone you don't trust, and Lucas learned that lesson the hard way. Burke killed Megaton Sheriff in cold blood and left his son an orphan. I can't imagine Burke left Megaton alive after killing the sheriff, and 20 years later, Lucas's son Hardin is the new sheriff, although despite the townsfolk knowing the Lone Wanderer saved their lives that day, Hardin still blames them for getting his father killed. Mr. Burke's main goal in the game seems to be blowing up the town and ridding the wasteland of lesser people, something he will do if given the chance, either with Tenpenny or with Roy Phillips in the event he takes over the tower, showing his desire isn't so much about serving Tenpenny and keeping him happy, so much as it is about serving his own selfish desires, which appears to be ridding the wasteland of ghouls and other aberrations of nature. In his own words, these times are the crucible for a glorious future, and one shouldn't be overly concerned with who gets burned in the process. Next is Azrakal, the owner of a bar in Underworld called the Ninth Circle. Azrakal is sneaky, sleazy, and adept at feeding other people's misery. In Azrakal's narrow view of the world, the more miserable you are, the more you drink, and the more you drink, the more money ends up in his pocket. And considering the fact that Underworld is the only ghoul refuge in the capital wasteland, he's become very, very wealthy, selling unlimited booze and chems to any and all. But as with all greedy people, it's never enough. And the Ninth Circle isn't the only place you can grab a drink in Underworld either. Across the hall you can also find Carol's Place, a restaurant and hotel where you can have something to eat, a friendly conversation, and if you're still sad afterwards, a relaxing drink, and perhaps a sleep. It goes without saying that Azrakal hates competition, and much like Burke, is waiting for the right person to come through and finish the job, which in this case is killing Greta, Carol's partner and co-host of Carol's Place. With Greta gone, Azrakal can prey on Carol, removing the competition and potentially getting more customers. If it wasn't clear, Azrakal measures everything in caps, and competitors like Carol only exist to be removed and their trade absorbed. The only real decision is how much it'll cost him to make that happen. Nothing is sacred, not even his own enforcer, Karen, who Azrakal sells for the right price. Yet, for all of his greed, Azrakal has one rule he won't break. Once a deal is made, it's binding. No excuse, no exceptions. He keeps his customers' secrets, not out of loyalty, but because loose lips are bad for business. Culture and history mean nothing to him. A relic only has value if it fills his pockets. A Stradivarius violin, for instance, is worthless to Azrakal, unless owning the thing brings in curious patrons willing to spend more caps. Having mentioned Karen, or Sharon, he does whatever Azrakal commands, including killing anyone who gets between him and his fortune. Azrakal claims that he thinks slavery is an abomination, but when it comes to Karen, there's no sign of freedom or fair payment. However, he clearly has no loyalty for Karen, as he's more than willing to give him up for the right price. And buying Karen's freedom is the best thing someone could do for Underworld. While Azrakal praises Karen for being obedient, he isn't loyal. And the second his contract is null and void, the first thing he does is remove his old boss from the land of the living. And no one seems upset.
You purchased my contract from Azrakal, so I am no longer in his service. That is good to know. Please, wait here. I must take care of something.
Shriveled black things. I'm talking real...
Azrakal, I am told that I am no longer in your service.
Photosynthesis.
That's right, Sharon. Have you come to say goodbye?
Yes.
Wow, wow, wow.
Bastard got what was coming to him.
Azrakal never showed warmth to the people in his life, and in death, the world around him returned the favor with total indifference. But if these next 5 characters were to be taken out, the Wasteland would surely revel in their absence, and it should come as no surprise that they can all be found in Paradise Falls. Every town needs a doctor, and Paradise Falls has Cutter. She runs the clinic and fixes up the injured slavers for caps. Unlike the other slavers I'll mention shortly, Cutter was actually born into slavery in the pens of Paradise Falls. Life as a slave was brutal, especially for those without any skills, but Cutter was lucky. Her mother handed down her own knowledge of wasteland medicine, allowing her to not only heal her own wounds, but also the wounds of the other slaves. When her mother passed away, Cutter took over her duties, but she slowly grew bitter and frustrated with the slaves and their inability to fight back against the slavers, and she wanted to be free more so than anyone else. So she started charging the slaves for her services, a bottle cap here, 2 bottle caps there, and over a decade later, Cutter was able to buy her freedom. A remarkable tale that could have ended there. She could have made her way to any other town and set up shop, continuing her work and using her skills to help good people. Instead, she chose to stay at Paradise Falls as a free woman, though instead of helping slaves for caps, she started healing slavers, seeing their payments as a form of retribution to make up for her previous life as a slave. According to Cutter, slavers have more caps than common sense, and as long as they have the money, she'll help them. Even so, the slavers know how Cutter feels about them, and the only reason they allow her to stay at Paradise Falls is because she keeps them alive. Their relationship is simply transactional, it's all business, though that business is still enslaving and selling people. And I think that's why Cutter has very evil karma. She claims it's all for the money, but her work keeps slavers on their feet, ensuring more captives are dragged into Paradise Falls, and those who do end up behind the fences, wearing bomb collars, receive no help from her. Inaction can be just as damning as action, and Cutter is guilty of both. She's healing the slavers while ignoring the suffering she once endured. Without her mother's teachings, Cutter would have died a slave, and now with that same knowledge, she refuses to help those in need. And I can't help but wonder what her mother would think if she could see her now. I'm putting the next 2 characters together mostly because they're father and son, but also because the rest of the slavers at Paradise Falls describes them as a pair of knuckleheads. Ymir is the father, not much to say about him, although we do know Ymir isn't fond of a certain slave named Frank.
This is your last mistake, little bartender.
Who Ymir accuses of watering down his drinks, and after one time too many, he bludgeons Frank to death. If you couldn't tell, he loves drinking, fighting, and drinking some more, rounding off a day with a good spot of fighting, leaving his son Yoten to clean up the mess. I'm not entirely sure why these 2 characters are given very evil karma. I can understand why Ymir has it, berating slaves, killing slaves, and joking about their deaths, but Yoten is simple-minded. He takes care of his father, which he describes as
a big job,
and he completely loses his mind if his father dies, killing anyone in sight, so he clearly loves him. I suppose the rating is much like cutters helping slavers while ignoring the mistreatment of slaves, an unfortunate circumstance, but very evil nonetheless. While Yoten is considered very evil, there's still a certain someone who's taken a liking to him, and it's not his father. One of, if not the worst slaver in the capital wasteland, is a woman called Carolina Red. Even among the cruel ranks of Paradise Falls, she stands out as a cold, violent psychopath with a dark past of abuse and torture. Her fellow slavers keep their distance, knowing just how unpredictable she can be. Red's usually found near the bar in Paradise Falls, telling disturbing stories about her father, such as the time he cut a man's legs off just to watch him crawl away, before smashing in his skull with a rock because he was bored. After telling the story, she usually pauses and comments that it was pretty funny, showing just how far she's gone, even by slaver standards. When she isn't telling stories, she's usually alone or with Yoten, and she likes a man who knows how to look pretty and stay quiet, and he's the only slaver in Paradise Falls who can do both of those things, unlike his father, who's the opposite.
Ymir, let's be honest, I'd sooner die than let you anywhere near my bunk. But feel free to send that boy of yours anytime.
It's strange that she can laugh about mutilation and murder, yet finds the idea of being hit on by someone she doesn't like outright disgusting. Lastly is Eulogy Jones, a man who needs no introduction, but if you didn't know, he's the leader of Paradise Falls. Unlike most slavers, Eulogy carries himself with a strange kind of class, wearing the nicest clothes he can find and surrounding himself with luxury, as much as the wasteland can offer. His station and rise to power fits perfectly with his very evil karma rating. He didn't earn his position through loyalty or respect, he took it by force. He'll tell you that he did it the old-fashioned way, with hard work, but in truth, he used his slaves to get close to the other slavers. You can imagine what they were doing behind closed doors, and through them, he knew nearly every secret in Paradise Falls. Eventually, with the right information, Eulogy was able to kill the former leader, Harmon Jurley, and take control. Not every slaver was happy with this outcome, yet every plot against his life failed, and soon enough, only those too afraid to make a move against him remained, and his authority went without question. Eulogy clearly controls others through intimidation, and after years of being treated this way, the other slavers are conditioned to obey him without question, and that dynamic extends to his two personal slaves, Crimson and Clover. They have been systematically brainwashed and threatened until they've become completely subservient to their master. Eulogy verbally abuses them constantly, and you can listen to their rants as the girls meekly plead for forgiveness.
You're not here to talk.
It's just that last week...
Why are you still talking after I told you to be quiet? I don't want to have to repeat myself again.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
Here on business?
When Eulogy is away, they're both catty to each other, though they refuse to speak with anyone else out of fear of what Eulogy will do to them. Unlike Crimson, who managed to retain some of her will despite the slaver's torture, Clover succumbed to her conditioning, and as a result her original personality was replaced by one of blind devotion and, dare I say, love for Eulogy. She willfully kills for, sleeps with, and does everything she's ordered to do by her owner. And for her devotion, Eulogy will sell her for as little as 500 caps. His lack of empathy extends to everyone under his control. He's responsible for enslaving many men, women, and children, who he calls livestock and breeders, selling them off to the highest bidder, with the children being a very good long-term investment, and as a result, worth more money. So if he has the chance to procure more children, such as Bumble from Little Lamplight, or Brian Wilkes from Greyditch, then he'll buy them without a second thought.
A very good eye, my friend. Those little ones are good as a long-term investment. They have their other uses as well, I'm sure. They are most definitely up for sale.
When you look at them side by side, Jaime, Tenpenny, Burke, Azrakal, and the slavers of Paradise Falls, you start to see that very evil isn't always about how many people someone kills, but why they do what they do. Some, like Jaime, were cursed and consumed by forces they couldn't control. Others, like Tenpenny or Burke, made a choice. They wanted to see the world burn and enjoyed the view. Then there are those like Cutter who convince themselves they're just doing business, when in truth they've become the very thing they once despised. In the wasteland, evil wears many faces, but no matter what shape it takes, the outcome's the same. Someone suffers so someone else can feel powerful, or safe, or rich. And maybe that's the real curse of the Capital Wasteland. Not the radiation, not the mutants, but the people who survived. Because in the end, survival alone doesn't make you good. It just gives you the chance to show what kind of person you really are.